The most common one, which becomes a challenge in onboarding sometimes, is how inconsistent the data is. Inconsistencies ends up with customer returns because it causes errors, which is obviously really expensive for the seller. You might order a t-shirt, for example, and the colour's slightly different, but it's fine, I'm not going to send it back. If a toilet is the wrong size or the pipe fitting is incorrect, then you literally can't install it, so it's just going to get sent straight back.
Hello, welcome to the Pimberly Perspectives for another episode. My name's Alex McConnell, and in this podcast we take a look at how different industries and sectors approach their product information management. A few weeks ago we had an episode with my colleague Alex Phipps talking about bathroom industry and how things are changing there for their product information management. Things like plastic packaging tax and digital product passports and things like that, and all sorts of other things. But today we've got another perspective on bathroom industry from the more Pimberly customer perspective, people that we've helped over the years with their product information. And to help me with that, I've got a new guest on today, Sam Crimes. Hello, Sam. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, sure. So my name's Sam Crimes. I'm one of the customer success managers here at Pimberly, so it's my role to make sure customers get the value out of the platform and that it continues to meet their goals. So I'm the main contact for sort of strategic guidance, best practice advice, ensuring that customers get set up for long-term success with Pimberly. I tend to specialise in the building materials sectors and bathroom sectors, which is why I think I'm here today.
Yeah, it certainly is. So without any further ado, let's sort of get into it. So when you're talking to these bathroom brands, and that, they're talking about where they come from and where you're trying to get them to, what sort of some of the most painful or time-consuming parts of managing their product data before they come into Pimberly?
I suppose you have to split it into two groups really, because there are those who had some sort of previous PIM and those who had nothing at all. So most bathroom businesses relied on sort of similar to the building materials sector, really, spreadsheets, archaic ERPs, manual processes, but sometimes PIMs too. So for those with nothing and every product update, whether that's a new finish, materials, I think it's specific to bathrooms, size changes, for example, that meant duplication of effort and manual input. So, especially those selling on multiple sales channels, having to go and change that data in every single place each time. Data tending to live in silos across teams. That slows everything down for obvious reasons, causes mistakes and inconsistencies. Business impact of that is that you have a massive delay in time to market and you miss a lot of opportunities with retailers, e-com sites and whatever channels you're selling on. And another one for those guys with nothing was just gathering the data in the first place, for whatever reason. So often brands will often say that, can you pull data together for a single retailer? And a lot of them would spend literally full days just collating data for one specific retailer. So that's some of the bigger challenges without any sort of PIM.
Yeah, though you mentioned sort of the ones that don't have a PIM. So maybe this is a question that's more relevant to those people who are sort of coming into it fresh. But I spoke with Alex a few weeks ago. From the sort of sales perspective, he's talking to these people before they come into Pimberly. They've identified some problems with how they're collecting their product information, how they're managing it. But what are some of those sort of hidden struggles that maybe don't come up in the sales process that they're only really surface once they come to you as customers?
It's a tricky one. I don't know if they're perhaps hidden, but perhaps less obvious. The most common one, which becomes a challenge in onboarding sometimes, is how inconsistent the data is. You might have colours written in 5 different ways, whether that's sort of green, GR. Big one, again, especially in the bathroom and building materials, is measurements being handled differently. So, millimetres and centimetres. There's no sort of agreed standardized practice for storing data in a specific way. That creates a lot of bottlenecks and errors and, again, inconsistencies. Ends up with customer returns because it causes errors, which is obviously really expensive for the seller. It's not like other it's not like other sectors, where people get the wrong information ahead of sale, because you might order a t-shirt, for example, and the colour's slightly different, but it's fine, I'm not going to send it back. if a toilet is the wrong size or the pipe fitting is incorrect, then you literally can't install it, so it's just going to get sent straight back. So they're probably that's probably one of the less obvious ones. Another one that crops up is the reliance on one or two people in the business that have access to the data. It's often in a local drive on that one person's computer. So obviously a huge business risk, and that's not always obvious until it comes to actually looking for the data, collating the data. A big one for building materials and bathroom brands is spec sheets. So we often uncover just how much time brands spend manually creating them and the impact of having sort of inaccurate or out of data sheets. They often don't realize how much of a drag it was until they see how easily Pimberly automates it, but people can spend weeks editing manually put data sheets, which then become out of date within another couple of weeks. So that's one of the big ones that comes out.
You alluded a bit to how Pimberly can help with that issue. So automating things like creating the product data sheets. So how does that work? If I was going to ask you about which sort of Pimberly features they find the most value in sort of bathroom brands, but you've sort of identified that one there. So how does that help them sort of straight away?
Anyone who deals with product data sheets will know that creating them is a pain, but more than anything, maintaining them is a pain. So it's something that you have to do manually in probably in InDesign or something similar as a PDF, manually build them, get the data, collate the data from whatever silos they're in. Often they're in emails, supplier, existing spec sheets, or in some spreadsheet somewhere. Go out and every single one you've got to manually create. What Pimberly allows is to simply automate that production. So using the data in Pim, we have an integration with InDesign where it maps out that data to a predefined template, and every time a piece of data within Pimberly changes, it automatically recreates a new product data sheet and pulls it back into Pim. So you've constantly got accurate data sheets, or at least data sheets that reflect the data you have in Pim. Obviously saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean that's like an immediate kind of obvious kind of time saver, efficiency and stuff like that. What are some of the other kind of quick wins or improvements that customers see quite quickly when they're switching to using a PIM, especially Pimberly?
The first one that you tend to hear people say is that you'll catch up with them the first week of go live, and they'll say a retailer asked me for 100 products this week in a really specific format, and I was able to generate an export in a few minutes. That's the first one you hear people come back with and say, because I think that's the one thing that was super painful beforehand without a PIM. Syndication, that's always a quick one. Inputting changes once and just seeing it across your sales channels, that's an instant win. And again, to bang on about it, data sheets for those using that module, because as soon as that's set up, you're able to generate data sheets in a few clicks for your entire product range. Just a few clicks and let it go off and build them in the background. So they're all pretty instant wins.
Yeah, you mentioned bathroom brands as a company. You've got quite a few customers in this space, haven't we? Can you think of any kind of improvements specifically that that those kind of brands have uncovered or have talked to you about? What do they really value in the longer term beyond that initial kind of first few weeks or months?
The most obvious, I suppose, is tangible impact is speed to market. So launches that used to take weeks can now take less than a day. I had one customer recently go from 2 weeks to half a day. So think how much that when you extrapolate that time over a year or two, how much time that's saving them. That means you can quickly launch a new product range or beat competitors to market if you've got shared, if you're selling shared products. Same goes for getting data out to your B2B customers. Your errors and mistakes drop dramatically. That obviously strengthens your relationships with retailers, but reduces returns on your own sales channels, saving a lot of money in dealing with returns. And I suppose because so much of the admin side, those sort of repetitive tasks are all automated, teams are then free to actually focus. That's probably the main theme, really, that teams are then actually able to focus on sort of growth initiatives, like expanding your product range and exploring new sales channels, actually enriching and manipulating your data to improve things rather than constantly firefighting gaps and inaccuracies.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of range of the size of these businesses are that you tend to work within the bathroom space. But Alex mentioned quite a few times it's quite sort of lean kind of teams as well. So I can imagine that's even more of an impact when you're talking about time savings and efficiencies and things like that. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've got customers in that space ranging from teams of 1 or 2 to 20, but to be honest, it still has that same impact. It still frees up just more FTEs, if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that. Yeah. So it still frees up that amount of time. But yeah, particularly, especially in those smaller teams where they just simply don't have the manpower to handball data all day, every day. If they can automate as much as possible, then it gives them the ability to be proactive.
Yeah. And does it help with them with things like collaboration and having confidence in the data and things like that as well? Does it have any sort of like cultural impacts on the teams as well?
Of course, in terms of cultural impacts, yes, and that is that main shift. Going from being a reactive team to a proactive team. So instead of firefighting errors, chasing after other people in the business, like you say, that team collaboration is huge. So you might have e-commerce teams, especially will be familiar with this, chasing down category managers and buyers, who then in turn are chasing down suppliers, all to get one small piece, small attribute, that you then got to do that process over and over again. So you do have that cultural shift from being a reactive team to a proactive team. In terms of collaboration, yeah, especially in not just in the large business, but especially in those large businesses where communication isn't quite as they're not always working in the same office. They might not know the people they're asking for the data off. So especially between the likes of product buying, marketing, e-commerce, having that central space within built up life cycles and workflows where everyone has a role and knows what they're doing, it massively speeds time to market.
So looking ahead, what are these bathroom businesses asking for as their next thing? They've realized these time saving things. That's almost like the baseline of what doing all these, like taking charge of your product data can do. But there's so much sort of beyond that, other sort of features within the PIM that they can take advantage of. What they're looking for is their next step once they've got to that point.
A lot of brands are asking for more analytics. They want to measure data completeness and enrichment so they can keep driving that sort of continuous improvement. We are seeing a huge demand to help with managing and collecting sustainability and compliance data, especially in the bathrooms and building materials sectors. And especially in packaging as well, because there's new legislation making that a requirement. And the obvious one is AI. People want to look at AI for all the usual stuff. Writing product descriptions, auto-categorizing, scraping data from supplier PDF sheets so they can put it into their own attributes. Everyone wants to use AI for something, don't they?
So what's the biggest opportunity, do you think, for them? What are some of the areas that they could start using? I mean, we've just brought out the Pimbles, like the ability to write AI prompts and apply those over multiple products at once. There's lots of opportunities for them to get more value in the future. What do you think are the sort of the main key ones that maybe what's like the top 1 or 2 kind of things that you would point when your bathroom customers towards next?
Probably that, to be honest. You probably already answered that. In terms of, and it is the common, it's the answer to everything at the moment. But the biggest opportunity, and that's in bathrooms and across all sectors, is using automation and AI, isn't it? That's where SaaS software should be focused. So both allow your businesses to be more strategic, proactive. AI, obviously, you can generate tailored content for specific retailers. You can automatically populate attributes, like I've said before, from supplier spec sheets and also categorizing. That's all saving time. It's all allowing you to be more proactive. General automation in Pimberly, I think, is underutilized by some customers, and it's a huge opportunity. So it can handle tasks like releasing products to channels based on set criteria. It might be managing translations through something like DeepL. I've not actually talked about translation, and I should, because for anyone selling internationally, that's a big time saver. Populating attributes automatically based on sort of related attributes. There's loads of clever things you can do with our workflows. So almost any repetitive task can and should be automated. So I think that's probably I don't say gap, but yeah, a big opportunity where people can do more. Because together, both of those capabilities free up a lot of time to focus again on growth and improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Tim, colleague Tim, about IT distributors, and how they can, they've had quite a lot of success in just automating these things, and there's really no upper limit to how much time you can save. If you can think of a process that's manual that you can automate, then there's a huge opportunity there to save a lot of time. Is there concern in the bathroom industry, particularly, maybe not, but more broadly, about human in the loop and those sorts of things? How much do you automate versus how much do you keep manual or have some oversight over? How do they sort of manage that?
Yeah, I suppose with AI, anyone who uses AI or any sort of automation, it's giving you something to check, isn't it? You shouldn't solely trust it, because and no one would. If you were asking ChatGPT something, you wouldn't solely just send that out to your whatever you're using it for without reading it first. So there's always that element of human checking, but I think more and more people are trusting it to do the bulk of the work, and then you sort of a quick eye test and you say, yeah, that's working, happy to send that out. So yeah, I think the same as any market where you use it as best you can, but it's always going to require an element of human intervention.
Okay, I don't think there's too much more to go over here that I've written down in my questions, at least. So unless you could think of anything else you'd like to cover, Sam.
Not particularly, just that we're seeing more and more bathroom brands.
Yeah, I wonder if you've got a view on why that is. Alex was of the view that it's quite a complex kind of data set anyway, of like the configurations and the bundles and kits and things like that are inherent to the bathroom industry, and then things like the plastic packaging tax and DPPs and things like that. Do you think those are sort of the core drivers for bathroom businesses finding so much value in PIM?
If the competition is doing it, you're going to have to do it because the standard's getting so high. Some of the market leaders have insane amount of product data, and to manage that across thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of products is very difficult without something like a PIM. So, like you say, you have to be able to automate certain things. You need a solution that allows you to manage that data effectively, or you're just going to get left behind, I suppose. And like I said, there's more legislation, the EU green stuff coming through, the packaging legislation coming through. There's just more and more data to manage all the time.
Yeah, I know Pimberly especially is a very sort of flexible kind of platform to use, whereas others can be quite sort of rigid and having to go, if something changes, suddenly there's a new piece of legislation or there's a new piece of data that you need to be capturing. It can be quite onerous to add that into your solution. But Pimberly, how do you find the approach in Pimberly to doing that? Is it quite flexible for customers if they have a changing requirement?
Well, I was going to say something similar earlier, actually, because when you were talking about sort of challenges that people have pre-Pimberly, those who do have a PIM, they come over for a number of reasons, like I say, value for money or wanting to move away from on-premise. But something more specific is that you hear is the sort of flexibility to change your config quite quickly. It might move away from a legacy or an in-house ERP, where if you want to add a new attribute or you want to add a new value to a data set, if you work like that, then you have to go through IT, and it can take days to change, and sometimes people just don't bother. So yeah, that's one of the key differentiators to using a SaaS platform like Pimberly.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Sam. Really appreciate you sharing those insights with me and with the listeners, of course. So if you have any questions about anything you've heard today, please do leave a comment. Otherwise, please join us next time for another episode of Pimberly Perspectives. Thanks very much.